All right, how many of you have played disc golf or even heard of the sport? Really? I did not know that. Disc golf is a flying disc game in which individual players throw a flying disc at a target. And I'll start off with a brief history of the sport. Modern disc golf started in the early 1960s. It seemed to have been invented by many people independently. Students at Rice University in Houston, Texas held tournaments with trees as targets as early as 1964. And in the early 1960s, players at Pendleton King Park in Augusta, Georgia would toss frisbees into 50-gallon barrel trash cans designed as targets. So the first targets of the sport were trees and 50-gallon barrel trash cans. The true pioneer of the sport of disc golf was Kevin Donnelly, who began playing a form of disc golf in 1959 called street frisbee golf. In 1961, he formulated and then began organizing disc golf tournaments in his home city. This eventually turned into a citywide disc golf tournament. This highly publicized tournament had published rules, hole lengths, pars, and penalties. And in 1975, Ed Hedrick formed the first disc golf association, the Professional Disc Golf Association, or the PDGA, which now officiates the standard rules of play for the sport. The sport has now nearly 3,000 courses in the U.S. and more than 4,000 globally. This game is now played in more than 40 countries worldwide, primarily in North America, Central and Western Europe, Japan, New Zealand, and Australia. According to the PDGA, the object of the game is to traverse the course from beginning to end with the fewest numbers of throws of the disc. Now we'll get into the course components. All courses share the same basic elements: targets or baskets, tee pads, and signs. The first are targets or baskets, and this is what one looks like. The first targets were known as tonal poles because of the sound they made when hit. These consisted of a metal pipe placed on a smaller metal pipe, and when struck by the disc they made a gong type sound. These were much more accurate than a tree, of course, and disagreements led to the invention of the disc pole hole by Ed Hedrick in 1975. The basket is the standard for disc golf courses today. Next are tee pads. The tee pad is where the player begins the hole. A solid base is a must for any successful course. And where early courses had plain dirt pads, modern courses use concrete or mulch. In recent years, recycled rubber mats have been used, but concrete is usually the standard. And then next are signs. Signs are critical to any good course. Knowing distances, par count, out of bounds, and layout for each hole will give a player the information they need to make a great shot. Many courses have a main layout sign at the beginning of the course to show details of the course as a whole, as well as any needed information about the course. Hole signs give specific details about the hole the player is on, such as mandatory paths, out of bounds, and length of the hole. There are two main manufacturers of disc golf discs, and they're Innova and Discraft. Now we get into disc types. The golf discs used today are much smaller and heavier than traditional flying discs, and weigh between 90 and 180 grams. Discs used for disc golf are designed and shaped for control, speed, and accuracy, while general-purpose flying discs, such as those used for playing ultimate frisbee, have a more traditional shape, similar to a catch disc. There is a wide variety of discs used in disc golf, and they are generally divided into three categories: putters, all-purpose mid-ranges, and drivers. And as I get into these, I will pass these around for you to see. First are putters. Putters are similar to the discs used in simple games of catch, such as frisbee. They are designed to fly straight, predictably, and very slow, compared to mid-ranges and drivers. They are typically used for tight, controlled shots that are close to the basket. And some players even use them as drivers to get around trees and other obstacles that are in the way. Next are mid-range discs. Mid-range discs have slightly sharper edges that enable them to cut through the air better. These discs are usually faster, more stable, and have a longer range than a putter. Some players will use mid-ranges as drivers, and there are even tournaments that require you to only use mid-range discs. They are good all-around discs and are suitable for first-time players. Next are drivers, which are my personal favorite. Drivers are usually recognized for their sharp beveled edge and have most of their mass concentrated on the outer rim of the disc rather than distributed equally throughout. Drivers are often divided into different categories. For example, innovatists divide their discs into distance drivers and fairway drivers, while Discraft divides their discs into long drivers, extra long drivers, and maximum distance drivers. Now we get into stability and how the disc flies. Stability is the measurement of a disc's tendency to bank laterally during the flight. A disc that is overstable will tend to track to the left, while a disc that is understable will tend to track to the right, and that's for a right-handed thrower. The stability rating of the disc differs depending on the manufacturer of the disc. Innovatists rate theirs +1 to -5, +1 being the most overstable and -5 being the most understable, while Discraft does theirs +3 to -2 in the same way. And you can find these ratings on the disc themselves. Now we get into throwing styles. While there are many different grips and styles to throwing the disc, there are two basic throwing techniques, backhand and forehand, or formerly known as sidearm. These two techniques are extremely different and are very much a player's preference. But it is highly recommended that players know both types of throws because both can be very helpful in certain situations. First is backhand. To perform this throw, the disc is rapidly drawn from across the front of the body and released towards the forward aim point. Due to the potential snap available with this technique, you can expect greater distance and accuracy than with its counterpart, the sidearm. It is important to initiate momentum from the feet, allowing it to travel up the body, hips, shoulders, accumulating to the transfer of energy to the disc. Next is forehand, or sidearm. This throw is performed by drawing the disc from behind, partially across the front of the body, similar to the sidearm throw in baseball. Now all discs are thrown with natural fall at a certain direction. This direction is known as a hyzer. So if I were to throw this disc in this way, it would want to go to the left. But an anhyzer is the opposite. It means you are making the disc go the way it doesn't want to go. So I would throw an anhyzer like that. It would go to the right and eventually go to the left. And you'll get more distance that way. And then there are alternative throws, which I won't get into, but I'll name a few. The hatchet or tomahawk, the thumber, the baseball, the grenade, and there's even one called the chicken wing, and I don't even know what it is. Many players use what is referred to as a run-up during their drive. This is practiced to build more forward disc momentum and distance. Throwing styles vary from player to player, but the standard throwing style is an X step, and I'll briefly demonstrate that for you. Basically, you're going to start off with your right foot, cross back with your left, and then again with your right, and you're basically building a whiplash effect with your arm. So basically, like that. So now you know all about disc golf, and you know its history and everything, but how do you get started? Discs range in price from a few dollars to more than 60. And you can find beginner packs at any sports store for around 20 bucks. These packs include one putter, one mid-range, and one driver, which is basically all you'll ever need. In conclusion, this sport is becoming more and more popular around the world, and I hope that you will become as interested in it as I am.